So, welcome to this year's edition of Youth Voice Week. Today's segment is called Money Talks, and I'm joined by Nancy, and we are going to be talking about all things funding, which is really exciting. So, I'm going to kick it off by asking you, Nancy, to tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Esther. So I am Canadian. I've been living in London for 8 years, and I originally started as a musician. I played double bass and was a vocalist, and went on this journey studying music and decided to go into arts administration early in my career. And I have spent the last 15 years or so working predominantly in fundraising, supporting artists, organizations, and really grassroots companies thinking about income generation of all kinds and how we build a thriving creative class. And along that journey, I have also left full-time employment to focus on mentoring fellow artists and creatives, and also working as a theater maker and dancer.
So thank you for that, Nancy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself as well. So I make R&B, jazz, Afrofusion music, and I am an artist based in London. I also do several bits, such as being a trustee for Sound Connections and also doing facilitation workshops when it comes to youth voice and participation. But I also dabble in the kind of brand space within the music industry, and also do other bits of work around kind of artist development. So a bit of a long CV, just like yourself, but all rooted in the art and trying to make this space as exciting and creative as possible. So I would love for you, Nancy, if you could just kind of give us some context to the funding landscape, and also how creative people or creators have managed or not to kind of navigate through that.
Sure, Esther. So I think one of the things that comes up for me is that, particularly in the UK, because I think we're talking predominantly about the UK music industry, you have lots of different avenues, both on the commercial and the non-commercial side. And there, I think in lots of ways, we grow up in conservatory programs if you come from a classical tradition, or if you're a singer, songwriter, producer, or DJ, thinking very much it's about a meritocracy of if you work hard and if you build strong relationships with people, then you're going to be able to be successful. But actually, in deciding to become a musician or a creator, what you've also decided is to become a creative entrepreneur. So the landscape right now is very much a community of freelancers. And we know with COVID that there's been huge impact on the sector. But I think it's actually an exciting moment now as we're starting to think about what does a creative class need? How do you build a really robust creative entrepreneur practice, and think about all the different sort of revenue models that can work for you? I also say, you need a budget. You need a budget for business, and you need a budget in life. And sometimes we get a little bit scared because money is a hot topic. It's something, I personally have felt a lot of shame about in the past. And so I think for the current landscape, it's about, I think, rebuilding. There are a number of avenues, particularly for public funds and other opportunities for emerging artists. And it's about really being curious and looking for exciting collaborators at this time. But I don't know, I wonder from your perspective, I mean, you've sat on panels, particularly for music artists. Like, what have you noticed in the landscape?
Yeah, that's right, Nancy. So I've sat on the Mobile Help Musicians panel, as well as the Youth Music panel. And that's been a really interesting experience, because I was also someone who applied for those same funds a couple of years back. But I guess being on the other side of it now, it's really interesting to see creative people really embrace this element of entrepreneurship. And I think that that's what technology has allowed to happen. We have essentially been able to have far more information than we did 5 years ago, and kind of understand things a little bit better, and also have the space to experiment. So one thing that is great, but also is can be a little bit difficult is that there are a lot of people applying for funds, which now makes it a little bit more competitive. And we already kind of operate in a competitive industry. So I think that's going to be really interesting in terms of what these public funds can offer, if there are going to be any more new funds that are going to be put out there to support this new class, as you say, of like emerging creative entrepreneurs, because I think it's really important to kind of understand that as an artist, sometimes that traditional pathway doesn't work, or it's just not fit for purpose in 2021. So it's really important that artists become a bit more creative around how they choose to monetize their art form or not, and also get access to these funds that are available. But then also on the other side, funders are gonna have to probably introduce more funds, more funds for artists to make sure that we can have that next generation of creative entrepreneurs at every single level.
Totally. And do you think, you sort of in your experience, do you think that it's going to be really interesting going forward? Do you think it's an exciting time to be entering the industry and to be thinking about these things?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's also like an element of, I guess, fear, because when you enter the creative industry, well, at least when I did, I had no idea what this was going to look like. I don't think there really is a roadmap that your career is going to end up like this if you do X, Y, Z. I think artists and creatives should kind of get rid of that notion that your career journey is going to look like someone else's. It's going to be absolutely different. And I think the minute we start to embrace that, which is what I'm seeing, the more exciting things get, because it's a case of like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen in 5-10 years time, but I know that this is what I want to do. There's this fund out there that can help me do that. I've got this part-time job or full-time employment that's going to help me contribute to that. And we're going to build a plan, and we're just going to go and we're going to stick to it. And I think what I've seen from the kind of new funding applications that I've been sitting on is that creative artists are starting to think like that. They're saying, this is me, this is my niche. I'm not like this person, I'm not like that person. I need money for this. I'm going to try out this, and I'm going to try out this. And that's really exciting.
And I think one of the, just to pick up on something you said, I think this idea that it's no longer linear, right?
Mm.
Like we go from this perspective of, okay, well, if I do X plus Y, I'm going to get outcome Z. The reality is that actually, for both of us, we've both had really interesting and more circular artistic journeys than we have gone in a straight line. And part of it is that we're the culmination of all of the skills that we've picked up along the way. I often talk to people about being a hyphenate, the idea that you do multiple things professionally well, where it's not even about dabbling, it's that actually we are professionally competent in lots of really skilled areas, and that our artistry and the work that we make is actually better because it comes with all of the context. And I think not being scared to lean on strengths and skill sets to be able to feel stability, because I think that's actually the other thing in the artistic practice. There's that old perception of I have to struggle for my art. It's that you need to be really clear on who you are and what you're about, which is exactly, I think, what you were saying. And it's that you have to really be curious of people and collaborators, and really open to possibility. And I think, we've talked about this briefly offline, but one of the ideas that I kind of come back to now is that we all have this concept of resilience. And it's not just about being, resilient and strong. It's actually the idea of being flexible while still knowing who you are and what you're about. So it's thinking about how are we clear about I am this person and I'm not this other person, and here's how my skill set is unique and my voice is unique, and how do we have the resilience to continue even when we get rejection? Because I think that's something that working in other sectors or having other experiences, you have to be really comfortable. We're in a no business more than we are in a yes business.
Yeah.
And I sometimes like I was thinking in the pandemic, personally, I've applied for in the last 18 months for 47 funds for myself. And so when we talk about public funds, everybody, we're talking, for those watching at home, public funds are money that are coming from statutory organizations. So the money might come from Arts Council England, which is actually lottery money. In many instances, it might be coming from PRS, it might be coming from Jerwood Arts, which is a private foundation, but that funds emerging artists' work. And it's money that is not a loan, it's a grant. You agree to particular activity that you're going to do against that grant, and you don't have to give that money back. It's considered an investment in your practice. But I've applied to 47 of those in the pandemic of varying kinds.
Yeah.
And I was successful on 7.
I think that's so important to put that out there, because similarly to, you know, to your experience about applying for funding, there's loads of funds that I've gone for that I haven't got. We are in the business of no. So I think when you speak about resilience and I guess the reality of what it looks like to apply for these funds, it's a case of going again, revising your plan and going again. But I think that clarity on what you want to achieve is really important, because that means everything centers around that vision that you have for yourself. And whether it's public funds that you get, you know, on this part of the year, and then you self-finance that, and then later on in the year you manage to get that grant, and then you can kind of inject that back into your vision and your plan. I think that's, you know, realistically how these things go. So you have to be prepared to apply for the 47 applications, be prepared to only hear, you know, positive results from, you know, a handful really. But I think having that strong artistic vision for yourself, both in terms of, yeah, your artistic vision, but your life is really important. And I want to touch on something you kind of mentioned. You spoke about like stability. And I think that is a word that is a key word in this industry, because I guess it means different things to different people. But I think for me, stability is about having that regular income stream. And I guess that's why, as an artist, I do kind of dibble and dabble in quite a few bits, because I know that I'm getting this constant stream of income that meets my basic needs, and anything extra is for fun or for music. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's really important, especially for the younger artists, to understand that having a job is perfectly fine. Actually, please have a job. Please have a stable source of income, because actually you can't create if your basic needs are not being met. You know, if you're struggling, you're having anxiety around money and finances, there's no way that you have the brain capacity to even think about creating. And in the conversations that have been happening over the years, we talk about mental health, and that's really, really important in the creative sector, especially because creative people and neurodivergent people are prone to mental health issues or anxiety and depression and things like that. And money is a very, very, very big part of that, you know, especially when you're living in a city like London, which is one of the most expensive cities in the world. It's really important to have your basic needs met. So sorry, just off the back of what you said about stability, I thought I'd just put that out there.
No, and I think like it's really helpful. Again, you're committing to being an entrepreneur, and I think something that I've struggled with is the idea that just because I have having a day job, does that mean I'm any less of an artist? And I think a lot of people have an existential crisis about, you know, what is my value of an artist? How does that work in the pandemic? You know, if I'm not in a room collaborating with peers, what is my value? And I think I always kind of start from a place of, you know, if you are an artist, I believe you. And I think funders as well, and I'm sure you've seen this as a panelist, fundamentally do want to fund you. It's that you have to help them support your work. And actually, I wanted to ask you, you know, when you're looking at applications, because like as a grant writer and as a mentor for people, I'm always saying, how much money do you need to thrive? What does that look like? What impact does that have on your art? How would it make you feel? How much do you need per month? Do you have clarity in a budget that tells you what your basic needs are?
Yeah.
how much money you really, because sometimes I think we don't, I think about like the moments where you avoid your banking app or you avoid looking at your bank statement to say,
Yeah.
how much do I really need to be, to not meet my survival needs, but actually to thrive. And I think there is a bit of an abundance mindset that has to come to say, okay, if I imagine that the more there is, the more there is, and
Mm.
that there is enough for us all, because that's not necessarily how the system has been built.
Yeah.
But if we were to take a step back and say, okay, when I win, everybody wins, because when I win, my money then gets dispersed and redistributed within my community in lots of different exciting artistic and practical ways, then what would that look like? And then where am I going to find those sources of income that then allow me to have the creativity, the space, and the relaxation to make the album or the EP that I know I need to make,
Mm.
or to challenge myself and to broker collaborations and to self-invest in the first instance. It's not about putting yourself behind to get ahead. It's about how do you do it in a really sensible way that isn't where you can take risks, but they're risks you're choosing. They're not risks that are unknown. And I think it's those two things. But what I wanted to know from you is when you're reading a bid, let's
Mm.
say, from an artist, what are you looking for in those bids and what makes a great application from an emerging artist?
Wow. I mean, there's so many things. And I think just as an artist, for me, the main thing is the art. It's the music. And the quality of the voice, the production, the lyrics. Like that for me is number one. That's what I listen to. I don't read the application necessarily with my eyes. I listen to it first. And then that's my strongest judgment. Then the other bits and bobs are depending on who I'm sitting on the funding board for. So, if I'm with Help Musicians, for example, it's about looking at, what is the project for? Has the applicant responded to the questions that are being asked from them? Because you'd be surprised at how many questions go unanswered. And then also looking at their bio, looking at what have you done before, because some applications are for people who have just started, like fresh out of uni or whatever, and you want to make a little bit of music, great. But some are for the more more established emerging artists who've had spots on radio, who've done a few festivals, who've collaborated with this person. So it's really about making sure, like, is this fund suitable for this person? Is this the right time? And then of course your plan. I think that's the thing we're looking for. Okay, you want to record this piece of music, fantastic, it sounds great, but what happens next? Once you record it, who does it go to? Who are you contacting to put this out into the world? And I think that's really important, that commercial awareness that I think I know I definitely struggled with before, but I think a couple of artists struggle with that. They're like, oh, I'm just going to make this and my life's going to change. It's like, yes, it will, but people need to hear it. So what is that next step? And that comes into I guess, the business of music. And I actually spent most of lockdown finishing a master's degree in music business management. And that for me was the best thing I could have ever done as an artist, because I know marketing now. I know what that means. I know how to put a timeline together. I know how to put a budget together, things like that, that my artist brain was like, no, we're just going to go in the studio and we're going to make something. And it's just like, no, no, no. You need to have some structure around it. So those are just a couple of things that I've picked up from sitting on funding bids. How about yourself, Nancy? I guess, what are the top two things that stand out for you when you're looking at a funding application?
Well, I think you've actually highlighted a couple of things that I just want to echo. So one,
Yeah.
to say that, so I have a master's in marketing. I did my undergrad in music and I pursued my master's in marketing because communications, in I think if we come back to it, to be an artist, and because I've worked so heavily in fundraising, it's a relationship business. So people fund people, people invest in people, people collaborate with people. And so I think it's about, you can be, very rarely, if you are the most virtuosic artist, but you're not a nice person, sometimes those things coincide. but not always.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of questions around like my two tips when we were thinking about this was very much really that it's not linear and to invest in relationships with
Mm.
people because you never know who someone, and this is something I learned working retail as a teenager, you never know who has money and who doesn't, and it's not your business. And two, um, you never know who somebody's going to be, and you don't know who you're going to be. And so I think it's important to act with humility and to say, we are all human beings. We are all worthy of respect and opportunity. And I don't know who you might be working at EMI or be doing A&R for Sony Music in X number
Mm.
of years time, or you might be in a band that I want to collaborate with, or you might be an amazing accountant that I
Mm.
really want to work with who specializes in creative industries or whatever. But I think having a really curious mindset to build relationships with people is like, for me, tip number one.
Yeah.
And that's applicable whether you're in the I mean, it's so interesting talking to you because like I've really had to learn more about the commercial music industry in the last 5 years
Yeah.
because I'd come very much from a classical tradition. And the classical tradition, the commercial side of the classical tradition are um, film and TV recording. So working as a recording artist and working as and having a teaching practice. So those are the ways that you would stabilize your career, your sort of career in that. But
Mm.
even modern orchestral players are realizing, I know a number of professional orchestras in the UK where the artists are having to be mentored and learn how to present work in well-being settings
Mm.
because a huge piece of work now is being invested in around Alzheimer's, dementia, well-being, and mindfulness and
Yeah.
music and the partnerships there. So they're having to learn new skill sets of not being necessarily on a concert stage, but being bedside at Evelina Children's Hospital, which is a totally different skill set to
Yeah.
be a world-class Academy of St. Martin in the Fields player. So I think again, we're all having to wear many hats
Mm-hmm.
to sort of grow and evolve with the industry. So the second sort of, so that's kind of my linear piece. But then the second piece I would say is that if at first you don't succeed, to reapply and to have the resilience to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, feel the loss, and try again. So and I think again, if you get a no, to remember it's not about you as the individual. It's maybe that particular project, maybe the demo that they sent you was not the best demonstration of their work and artistically didn't really, pun intended, sing. Um, and that it might mean not now, and it might not mean not this organization. But again, that grant manager or the person reading the application, that's one more person that knows that you exist. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's something where I always say um, success is in the pursuit, the
Mm.
process, not in the outcome,
I
you
love
know?
I love that so much. And I think that's one of the things that I've come to learn, over the last 6 years of being an artist and diving into it and also having to wear many different hats. um, that it's not really about the destination. Like, the work will get done in terms of the artistic body of work, but it is about the process, and it's about learning to enjoy it, because I always think, what's the point of working so hard, of like, sweating and grinding and stuff like that, if you're not going to have fun? And I think that's one of the things I learned, is we have to enjoy this. And I'm so glad you touched on that. So I want to kind of wrap up this session by just asking you, in your opinion, where are the places that some of the emerging artists can start to look at, or not even just emerging artists, just artists and creatives in general? Where are some of the places that they can start to look at for funding and kind of help them to get on that next step?
Sure. So I think there's a couple of places, and I made a few notes of this. So Jerwood Arts is a great place to look, who are really supportive of artists in the first 10 years of their career. They have a fund that's open right now, which is 1-to-1, which is for emerging artists to pair together for sort of micro grants of about £2,000 to be able to pursue work together. And that's practitioners of a wide range of skill sets. PRS is also a great place to look and do regular open calls. And it's the PRS Foundation that you're looking for there. Arts Council England have two streams that are relevant, I think, for emerging artists at this stage, which is project grants, which is I want to make something with people, with outcomes, and sort of public engagement, really robust public engagement, which can be audience members, like other artists, producers, bringing people together and actually connecting with people in creative life. And developing your creative practice, which is really for, an artist who's saying, I am on the cusp of a step change. I am at the moment where something is about to shift in my practice, and I need investment to be able to make good on that shift, to be able to either take space, invest in resources, etc., to do that. And with developing your creative practice, I would say it is the most competitive. So that's one where there are blackout periods where you have to wait to then reapply. But that's one where I think if you're applying for that, that one in particular is ultra competitive, but still worth doing and good practice to get comfortable getting no's. Because I think that's also something that's really helpful. Other places to look, particularly if you're under 25, Prince's Trust also offer awards for entrepreneurship. And again, I think making the case for how we as musicians and creative artists contribute to society at large. I think it's good to, again, be looking to other funders as well for those opportunities. And I think, honestly, there's a number of amazing networking, creative Instagram accounts and places to look, like I Like Networking, that are posting opportunities, particularly for emerging creatives who are looking to access some funding and get some new opportunities and collaborations going. But I don't know, Esther, is there anything I've missed? Is there anything that you think that we all need to be looking for?
You covered such a broad range, and I've just got a few more. So definitely the Mobo Help Musicians Fund, and that's specifically for people who make music of Black origin. It's open to people who are UK wide, and that's a fund that I went for, and I was luckily successful in that, and now sit on the panel for it, which is amazing. There's also Youth Music, that's particularly for 16 to 25-year-olds, and they do have leeway for up to 30-year-olds if you have a disability. And those are small kind of £2,500 grants for you to, I guess, work on your music related activity. So whether that's, you want to start a record label, or you want to make this EP, or you want to put on an event, etc. As long as it's related to music, that's a fund that's available. And I'm still thinking.
Esther, you know who we've forgotten?
Oh
Sound
my God.
Connections.
Yeah, I did write that down. I was like looking for it. Yeah, no, Sound Connections. Yeah, Sound Connections. They offer lots of grants, actually. And I'm going to talk about the Wired for Music grant, because that's the one that I was kind of able to access. So there's a fund called Generate, which is a small fund to either fund your project, whether that's an EP, kind of getting some mentoring from someone that you really want to kind of be mentored by, or you want to put on an event. There are funds available for that, and that's again for the 16 to 25 age bracket. But then, Nancy, I know that there are some more funds with Sound Connections in particular that you could probably speak on.
So there's Generate, which again is particularly for Wired for Music members, as well as Innovate. And I know that they're sort of keeping in touch. I think, again, think of us as professional friends. Esther and I are both work with Sound Connections. Esther as a trustee, and I work with them consistently. But I think it's important to keep in touch, because we're a relationship that we want to be building with everyone who's watching today, particularly as we take the lessons we learned from Youth Voice Week and we kind of carry them through. But I think in general, the people tuning into this, you are all exceptional Googlers. There is no mystery to searching for funds. I think the top things from what we've been talking about today are, can you have a budget so that you know what you need and what your baseline is for your basic needs? Do you have a budget so you know what you need to be able to thrive? And can you put in a little bit of time to look at how different streams of revenue can help you build a sort of a stable foundation to then take your creative practice to make the best possible artistic work you can? Because that's really the thing. People connect to art and they connect to people. So we want to see, your artistry, and we want to hear what everybody kind of tuning in today has to say. I think the other thing that sort of I was sort of reflecting on as we were sort of preparing for today's session is the idea that we're all in this together and we're all a connected community. And if you're struggling or if you have questions, I know Sound Connections and the Wired for Music team are very happy to hear from people. We all have to be there for each other as we're sort of finding these ways forward in the sort of COVID recovery landscape. And and the last thing was if you have access needs, because Esther, you did touch on this. Many of the funders we're discussing have access support available or monies for you to be able to access either a note taker or somebody to assist with your application, or if you find something confusing and you need, and perhaps you are there are people who are neurodivergent or who have questions, and the best way to get in touch is to just email the info emails. The people are extremely friendly at these organizations and they might need a nudge. So don't be scared to nudge them if you haven't heard from them after sort of 5 to 8 days, but really do get in touch with them if you think you have access requirements that they could support you with, because many of these organizations want to hear from you and they want you to be able to do your best job. So don't be scared to get in touch and ask what might be available.
Absolutely. And just off that as well, get in touch with organizations to kind of run through your application. If you're thinking about, oh, is this the appropriate fund for me? Is this the right time for me? They're so happy to have a chat with you because this is money that is available to you. It's all for you. They want to give out as much as they can. So make their jobs easier by just reaching out. But yeah, that's kind of all I have to say. And I want to thank you, Nancy, so much for such brilliant tips, but also just reminding us of those things about, we are in this together. We're trying to help each other out. This industry is also a community and it's built off collaboration. So let's keep helping and supporting each other.
Such a pleasure talking to you today, Esther. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And I hope everyone is having a good time tuning in too.